Legal Terminology Module. There are 7 lessons with their corresponding desired objectives to be achieved by participants within this module. At the end of these short lessons, participants should have gained a basic understanding of the meaning and usage of legal terms in common legal situations and functions. Of course, we have to have a disclaimer, right? All the information provided in these short lessons is publicly available and provides interpreters working in the legal field with an understanding of basic legalese and other commonly heard terms. This information is not intended to be construed as legal advice. Participants will also be provided resources to complete the individual assignments and are encouraged to use the same to enhance their personal glossaries by incorporating the legal terminology used in these lessons so they can interpret and/or translate them correctly into their working languages. Lesson 5. Body Features. The objective here is for participants to gain a basic understanding of commonly used English terms when referring to body features and how to conduct effective research to interpret or translate them into the other working language. As interpreters, it is necessary to know terminology that addresses physical, physiological, and psychological characteristics of individuals. At its most basic, that would mean knowing the terms for body parts, shapes and forms, how the body functions, how the body behaves, and an individual's state of mind, for example. However, in this lesson, we are going to focus a little more on the kinds of terms that interpreters would encounter in a legal setting. Please note that basic anatomy terminology is readily found in reliable medical websites such as Medline Plus. You are encouraged to conduct individual research to enhance your personal working glossaries. The most obvious challenges regarding physical characteristics are the infinite number of ways human beings can be described. By the way, here's a little word trivia for you. Did you know that the infinity symbol is also known as a lemniscate? Do you know what it means and how to say it in your working language? It is a fairly common occurrence to ask the parties in a legal proceeding to provide descriptions of others involved in the case or action. Here is a sampling of commonly heard physical traits for hair length, color, and style. Hair can be short, long, medium, down the back. With hair color, you can say it's blonde, black, brown, red, gray, salt and pepper, bleached, highlighted. Or a hairstyle, straight, curly, frizzy, shaved, braided, tangled, or the person was wearing pigtails. Other physical traits would refer to the face and to the eyes. So, if you're asking about facial characteristics, the term could be pinched, hollow, chubby, bushy eyebrows, full, pale, has a goatee, has a beaked nose. If we're talking about face shape, it can be oval, heart-shaped, round, square, oblong. Eye color can be blue, brown, hazel, green, gray. Eye characteristics could be squinty, close-set, bulging, slanted, sleepy, almond-shaped. We also have to consider that people are going to make references about skin, build, and arms and legs. For instance, with skin, they could say it was freckled, tanned, pimply, blemished, fair, dark. With build, one can be short, tall, athletic, clumsy, fat, thin, agile, strong. And when referring to arms and legs, you can say someone is long-fingered, stumpy-legged, peg-legged, missing toes, rough gait, broad-shouldered, has a limp. Now, if we're going to talk about character traits, then Here's a sampling of commonly heard character traits that could be used with a positive or a negative bias. If you want to use a positive look on it, you could say the person is outgoing, is confident, is lively, determined, generous, sincere. And if you talk about it on the negative side, you could say the person is quick-tempered, deceitful, two-faced, sloppy, impulsive, moody. Remember, interpreters are expected to be able to render all these terms readily into their working languages. Individual activity. Before we continue, conduct an internet search to identify an equivalent term in your working language for at least 20 of the body feature terms presented. You can use handout 5A provided to write them down. Interpreters, especially when working in legal settings, will also need to know about serology. Serology is the scientific study of serum and other bodily fluids. In practice, the term usually refers to the diagnostic identification of antibodies in the serum. Such antibodies are typically formed in response to an infection, against a given microorganism, against other foreign proteins, or to one's proteins. There are serology techniques that are used depending on the antibodies being used. These include agglutination, precipitation, complement fixation, fluorescent antibodies, and chemiluminescence. Of course, a listing from A to Z with all the serology terms available would not be possible in this short lesson. So here is a sampling only. I encourage you to conduct individual research to identify other serology terms in English and your other working language. ABO is referring to blood types, and it's the basic classification system for blood types based upon the reaction of antigens and antibodies. Agglutination is the clumping together of red blood cells by the action of an antibody. Antibody, any of a large variety of proteins normally present in the body or produced in response to an antigen which it neutralizes, thus producing an immune response. Antigen, any substance as a toxin or enzyme that stimulates the production of antibodies. Arterial gushing or spurting, the large pattern of blood that is created when blood escapes an artery under pressure. The increase or decrease in blood pressure is apparent. If you were wondering why, as interpreters, you needed to know about serology, it is because of its link to forensic serology. Forensic serology is the detection, classification, and study of various bodily fluids such as blood, semen, fecal matter, and perspiration, and their relationship to a crime scene. Advanced serology offers biological screening services to the police, prosecution, and defense agencies. Serology testing first starts by pre-screening and sampling evidence items prior to submitting them to the DNA lab for further testing. Forensic settings are often quite challenging since the terminology used is very specialized. We established at the beginning of this module that interpreters need to first become familiar with the English terminology, understand its meaning, and subsequently research it in order to render it accurately and completely into their working language. While this lesson is too short to go into extensive detail about genetics, we will review some of the related terminology interpreters might encounter. Let us then look at even I can't say this, a DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, which is a thread-like chain of nucleotides carrying the genetic instructions used in the growth, development, functioning, and reproduction of all known living organisms and many viruses. How does DNA work? Any organism can be identified by the examination of DNA sequences unique to the specific species. To identify individuals, forensic scientists scan 13 DNA regions, or loci, and create a DNA profile for that individual, a DNA fingerprint. By the way, loci can also be pronounced loci. There is a very slim chance that another individual would have the same DNA profile or be an exact match for a specific set of selected 13 loci. Here are some of DNA English terms that interpreters will need to readily render into their other working language. Deoxyribonucleic acid, genome, gene, allele, locus, and loci, DNA evidence, combined DNA index system, and DNA profiling. I admit I find some of these terms difficult to pronounce because English is my second language. Sometimes it may seem like you say tomato and I say tomato, so I encourage all interpreters to conduct internet searches to find the pronunciation of any difficult sounding term. Often there may be more than one way to pronounce the term, so it is important that interpreters know the variations in pronunciation as well, so they do not get confused when they hear the term pronounced in a different way than what they are used to hearing. Here are links to some of the sources of the information presented. The links are included in Handout 5. In Lesson 5, the key points to remember are: since body features have both general and specific terminology, interpreters will need to learn both in their L1 and L2 languages. Individual activity. Conduct an internet search to identify an equivalent term in your working language for at least 20 of the serology and DNA terms presented. Use the Handout 5B provided to write them down. End of Lesson 5.